Okay, I am here today with Jeff Schulte. Did I say it right? How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm doing good. Jeff is a licensed pool contractor. And how many years you been doing this?
I started in 1972, so 50 years.
Wow, that's a long time. Your own company, S&S?
S&S for the last 11 years. For 30 years before that, I was Encino Pool and Spa.
Oh, okay.
And before that, I was Tom Thumb Pool Service.
Tom Thumb Pool Service. There you go. So, I know that you inspect pools because that's how we met. I met you on a home inspection. I think it was through a realtor named Allison Turner, and I'm pretty sure that's how we met. And I really liked you when I met you. Real nice guy, informative, and I've been referring you ever since.
And I sure appreciate that.
On big jobs that, I just don't want to deal with. Some pools I don't want to touch. I got my hands full already when I'm there. So home inspections have many different systems to look at. So sometimes I just want to refer someone else to that job so everybody's happy and everything gets done in a timely manner as opposed to waiting for me to do everything all day, So back to you for a moment. The work that you do you actually build pools as well?
Right. We build new pools, spas, and the new cocktail pool, which is a miniature pool. Sometimes it has a spa, sometimes it doesn't. We also do water features, fountains, waterfalls. So pretty much anything that's water related. Even some fish ponds in there.
Cocktail pools. Not sure if I've seen one yet. Do you mean like the real shallow ones that are not too big, or is there a specific look?
Perhaps I could say 10 foot by 20 foot or smaller. In the 70s and 80s, they were called spools, which was a weird name, but now we call them cocktail pools.
Okay, interesting. All right, yeah. Not familiar with that term, actually. So what I want to talk about first is how a person who's about to buy a house with a pool, can you explain to them what they should be expecting as a homeowner now that has a pool to take care of?
A pool is more than just a body of water that you can get wet in and refresh yourself. A pool is a way to bathe. A pool is a way to have a certain look for your yard to enhance the beauty of your home. And here in Southern California, we can swim in a pool easily for 6 months. But the other 6 months, it gets a little chilly here. And when water gets to be 55 degrees, you can't go in it, but it might as well look pretty to look at.
Yeah. Oh, you can have a heater too. Some pools have heaters.
Oh, heaters. Yeah, that's a new thing that was invented 2 days ago, but people like those. And it's a nice way to warm up your pool. You can have a gas heater. You can have solar.
Yeah, solar heating. Real quick on solar. How do you inspect and how do you test a solar heating system?
Solar heat, first of all, we have to understand it's a system that has a finite life to it.
Right.
And typically they last 10 to 15 years. And we can tell by looking at the style of the collectors on the roof, if we can see them. We don't go up on ladders to do this.
Right.
What era they are. And if they're over 10 years old, we would say, okay, we need to test this system, and we turn it on, see if it leaks from the roof. If it leaks, then we know that there's a problem, and
Gotcha.
It's got to be replaced or abandoned.
So that's pretty much how you see if they're bad, if they leak. Otherwise, they typically work.
They're either on or they're not.
Got it. Okay. That's simple enough. When I'm on roofs, I do climb roofs, and a lot of times I do run into, solar heating for pools. And I'm just always like scratching my head going, this is not a good idea to put something like this on a roof. It's just, first of all, you got to mount it to the roof. You get all that plumbing exposed to the sun, all that PVC pipe. And to me, it just looks like a bad idea. I don't know. It's just my opinion.
Well, the short answer to that is yes, it's a bad idea. I've seen many systems that are mounted directly to the roof with no air that can get under it.
Right.
And it traps debris, it traps little animals, it traps dirt, twigs, leaves, anything you can imagine it can blow.
It's a bad idea, period. Just for everything you just mentioned is exactly what I already thought of. And it's like,
well, when water gets underneath it and it's laid right on top of the surface of the roof,
shingles, yep.
it keeps them wet for a long time.
And they deteriorate.
That's correct.
Keep that in mind, people. You always got to keep your roofs clear. So if you got solar on your roof, you're actually laying another material on top of your roof. And if it's not breathing properly under there, it's always going to be moist. And you could experience roof leaks, whether it's on your garage or your house or wherever those solar panels are.
And they don't show up immediately, the leaks.
Right.
They always show up in 5 years or so.
Yeah. So number one on the list for anybody buying a home or even someone who already has a home with a pool is child safety.
Agreed.
So I'm going to let you run on that.
Child safety has always been the largest item on anybody's list building a pool. Nobody wants to build a pool that's going to cause somebody to lose their life.
Correct.
Nowadays, since approximately 2008, all pools have been required to have certain kinds of safety around them, whether it's a fence, a barricade, an enclosure, some kind of a device that's going to keep children away from the water. Prior to that, certain people would get an inspiration and install a chain link fence, which is climbable, or a short wooden fence, which you can move a box up to and climb over, or a wrought iron or glass.
Kids are smart. I was pretty smart when I was a kid. You put a barrier there, I'm going to find a way around it.
There you go.
That's all I had to do for that day. Let's figure that out.
So now we need to have a more impenetrable barrier for children that still looks good.
Right.
I've got to tell you, these mesh fences that are 5-6 feet high, and they can be green, brown, black. They may be slightly ugly, but boy, do they do the job well.
They do. They actually keep me out, never mind the kids, because you know how many times I've grabbed one of those handles and I'm like, oh, shit, how does this thing work? So, you know, sometimes they're hard to move, but that's intentional. They're not meant to be easy to move, and it can be kind of annoying if you're the adult just trying to get to the pool. But, yeah, it's definitely, I think, probably the best thing.
By the time a child is sophisticated enough to defeat the fence, they're old enough to swim.
That's a good point. And what I want to add to that real quick is what I've known, my experience inspecting homes with pools and talking to my clients, the buyers, even their realtors sometimes. When I bring up, you know, you got to remember all these side gates around your house are designed to keep people out, not just your kids, not just your family, but everybody in the neighborhood. And when I tell them that, the reactions I get are pretty astonishing. It's like, they're like, wow, I never thought of that before. I'm like, yeah, you got to remember, if you run down the street to the store and you leave your gate unlocked and then some 3-year-old just wanders out of his own yard and wanders into your backyard, who knows he's there? So you can't do that.
That's exactly right. And the gates that are on the sides of your house, they open outward towards the street.
They're
away
supposed
from the pool.
to.
And a child, even if they could figure a way to open the gate, can't necessarily figure out how to move that without bumping themselves. And the gate closes by itself.
Right. So self-closing, self-latching gates. And what's the height on that?
4.5 feet, 52 inches.
Okay, 52 inches. So I just did a house yesterday, a very expensive house, and the gates were not working right on that. So it doesn't matter how expensive your home is, how old your home is. They're either working or they're not working, and most people just ignore them. So if you have a pool, you want to get out there and check to make sure your gates on the side of the house actually close by themselves and they open outward. If not, call a fence contractor and have that reversed and have that fixed.
And that's an immutable point. It has to be self-closing, self-latching.
Yes.
In addition to fencing around the pool or fencing on the side of your house or an automatic cover that completely closes and you can walk on, besides all of those other devices that we can put on, including alarms, the main drain covers need to be certified. and they've got to have certain markings on them.
Right.
So this is another child safety item.
Exactly. So, and the other term for that is, I'm going blank real quick, for the main drain covers. Anti-entrapment devices.
Anti-entrapment
sorry,
devices.
I just lost my train of thought there. Entrapment devices, that's what we're talking about. So if you look into the pool, if it's an older pool, it's probably going to have one at the deep end, right there at the bottom. Newer pools, when did it change that any new construction pools had to have two?
It started in 2008 when the law became applicable, and no manufacturer had one at that time. So now we had a law, but it couldn't be enforced because we didn't have the proper items to install anti-entrapment covers.
Oh, okay.
We had good covers, but they weren't configured to meet the new law.
Right.
And it really wasn't until 2009, 2010 before everybody got their covers certified. Every pump on a pool is required to have two suction covers or suction inlets.
Right.
And if you've got two pumps, you can't have a shared main drain between them. Each one has to have its own two individual covers.
Got it. Okay.
So if it's a pool, you've got to have at least two main drains in the bottom of the pool.
Right.
If it's a spa, you've got to have at least two. And if you've got a spa jet pump, that's got to have two as well.
Okay.
And they need to be 3 feet apart, 36 inches from edge to edge of the
Right.
cover, or on separate planes, vertical planes or horizontal planes.
Okay. A question for you. I'm not sure you can answer this or not, but as far as a anti-entrapment device, main drain cover, what would you have to be doing with the pool for someone to be stuck to the bottom of that pool because they had the incorrect cover on there? Would it be a matter of the skimmer being really, the pool water being really low, and then the pool automatically sucking from the bottom? Or is there a scenario there that,
Well, back in the 60s, pools were plumbed with two suction systems, one from the main drain and one from the skimmer. And then they were tied together at the pool equipment with a valve or twin valves.
right?
And back then in the 60s, main drain covers were typically either a grating or a flat metal cover that just kind of slid over the top.
Right.
And they were removable. Nowadays, any main drain cover needs to be physically attached and can only be removed with a device like a screwdriver.
I see.
So that's helped change things to make it more difficult. Also, gratings are no longer allowed unless they're highly evolved safety covers, such as something that Aquastar would make. And they have three-dimensional gratings. As far as entrapment covers go, everyone that's certified needs to have certain wordage embossed on it. And it'll say...
You mean from the manufacturer?
From the manufacturer.
Okay.
And nobody from the distributor to the pool supply store to the pool serviceman to the contractor will be able to buy, purchase, or sell or convey any of these devices.
Right. Back to the question I asked you a short minute ago. I'm not sure I quite got the answer I was looking for. Maybe I didn't ask it correctly. So let me try that again. So what I'm saying is, if anti-entrapment devices, if we're telling people that, if you get too close to that bottom drain, there's a chance it could suck somebody down to it and cause really bad personal injury.
Well, if we had a single main drain, that's absolutely true.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, somebody showing up goes down and says, and is thinking to themselves, look, I can sit on the bottom of the pool. And they're sitting on the main drain, and their tush will cover the entire drain, and that pump keeps sucking, and it will pull your insides out.
Right. So that's what it takes to completely cover that. That's what it would take for that action to happen.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
And VG drain covers are mechanically designed so that can't happen, but they're installed in pairs, so you have dual main drains.
Right.
And God forbid somebody I know I keep saying that, but I always hope he forbids that stuff. Somebody goes and sits down on one of the two drains and they plug it completely. All the suction goes to the other side.
Right.
And they're free.
Right. Got
So
it. Okay.
Anti-entrapment.
So that's the importance of having the correct covers on a single main drain.
Yes.
And then if you have an older pool, then most likely you have a single main drain.
So all covers that are sold or conveyed in the United States must have that safety embossment on it, which proves that it's been tested and retested again.
Got
so
it.
Nothing other than the safety covers can be sold.
Got it. Okay. And other entrapment, I'm sorry, not entrapment, other child safety devices you can get are alarms on the exterior doors going to the pool. There's other things like that you want to mention?
There are alarms that are mounted at least 5 feet above the floor, and they're battery operated and will fit on a door, any kind of door, and they can't be Velcroed on or glued on. They have to be mechanically attached, like with a screw or a nail.
Right, and they're very, very noisy.
They're awful.
They're awful.
That's the whole point of them.
Yeah, if you're standing next to it and that goes off, you're going to jump out of your skin. Let me ask you a question about the self-closing, self-latching door part of the Swimming Pool Safety Act there. Now, I've heard in home inspector meetings we're covering this, but I'm not so sure it's correct. The way it was explained to me is if you have sliding doors on the rear of your house facing the pool and you don't have a mesh fencing, those doors themselves are supposed to automatically close?
They're supposed to.
Same with windows, right?
Not necessarily. If you have a clear story window that goes from floor to ceiling, yes. But if you have a standard window, it's not incorporated.
Oh, I see. So only if it's from the floor to the ceiling.
If it's easily scalable and
right. Okay, got it. All right. So once again, home buyers and homeowners, that's a good point to make there. So any of the doors and windows facing your pool backyard area, patio area, if they're easy to open or a child can just push them open or anything like that, what this rule is saying is that these should be self-closing as well. But how do you self-close a sliding door? I've never seen that.
You can change it out and put in French doors. When a building becomes part of the enclosure, it's required to conform.
I see. Got it. So this is really going to play with new construction.
Yes. I had a client, and I know this is a one-off thing, but it was a new house, and it had 22 sets of French doors that opened directly out to the pool area.
Wow.
That was a lot of alarms to install.
That's a lot. It's like the house I did yesterday. It had so many windows. It was crazy. But anyway, okay, so that's a good point. So we just want to, share with everybody the importance of this child safety with regarding a pool.
Now, there are alternatives to door alarms or window alarms, and that would be a poolside alarm that sits on the edge of the pool.
Yep.
And not only do they have a alarm at the pool side, they have a remote buzzer that plugs into the house and relays the buzz. And it's enough to wake up anybody in the house.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard one of those go off. I've seen them, but I've never heard one go off.
They are extremely annoying, as they should be.
Yes, that's the whole point, everybody. It's annoying, so you'll go turn it off and check what's going on. That's the point of it, to bring your attention to the pool, because something or somebody might be in it. Okay, so
those are the two main items that I look at for child safety.
Okay. Those are the two main items. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So, by the way, there are 7, and you need 2 of 7 these days. Is that correct?
Some municipalities ask for 2. Some have now moved to 3.
Oh.
Which makes it even more so difficult.
You happen to know what municipality that might be offhand?
City of Los Angeles requires 3 now.
Really?
City of Beverly Hills requires 2.
Got it. Okay. All right. So, anything else about child safety you want to point out?
Well, I like automatic covers, but you've got to have a square pool to really get the use out of them.
Right. And those have to be ASTM approved, where they're safety covers, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. I don't run into too many of those. How about you?
We install a lot of them.
Oh, you do?
We do.
Okay. So you're actually doing the installations. How would somebody find you if they wanted to have that installed?
By referral.
Okay. By referral.
Yes. We don't advertise anywhere.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Wow, look at you.
I know.
Well, excuse me.
We're swamped.
Good for you, man. It's, being too busy is a good problem to have. All right. So that'll basically cover our message on the child safety and the importance of it. So remember, everybody, it's not just whoever's in your household, it's people around your household, fencing, keeping people out. Very important. You don't want to ever have to, discover something like that in your pool. Anyway, let's get into, I have a few questions for you. And GFCI protection for pool and spa lights, something a homeowner should know about and understand. Ground fault circuit interrupter is the outlet you probably see in your kitchen, counters, your bathrooms, outside of your home. Typically required in any wet areas, and we can definitely call a pool a wet area, So your GFCI is there to protect the pool. If in the event the pool light or spa light shorted out, it would trip the GFCI receptacle, keeping people from getting shocked or electrocuted in the pool. Is that about right?
Yes, we don't want people to get a charge out of that stuff.
No charge out of that. So Jeff, let me ask you, as far as the GFCI goes, is there a specific place it shouldn't be or should be, and location-wise?
A GFCI is required for any electrical light that's immersed in the pool, and you can have multiple lights attached to one GFCI as long as they're all on the same switch. But it's typical for a pool contractor to install a GFCI with a receptacle in it at the pool area so that a workman can use it for power.
Right, servicemen can plug in there, sure.
Problem with that is other contractors are not aware that has to be a dedicated line just for the pool lights. And say the gardener or the landscaper may plug in his landscape timers for his irrigation controls into it, which shouldn't be done. They should be hardwired to their own GFI.
Right. So it's a dedicated receptacle only for the pool lights and should not be combined with anything else. Right.
And whether you have a 120-volt light or a 12-volt light, they both still require a GFCI. But that's only part of the electrical GFCI protection required now. In Southern California, almost every municipality requires a GFCI breaker for each pump.
At the sub or the main, does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So it's difficult to wire up a pump with a GFCI because pumps move water. And so the breakers are very susceptible to tripping off time when you don't want it to trip. And there are certain kinds of breakers that are made specially for pool installations, and they have a little bit of a safety delay. So it might be 3 milliseconds once it senses an error in electrical stray current before it trips, and that's enough to have the pump keep moving and not shut off.
Got it. Okay. That's interesting. All right. And another thing along the electrical scope here with the pool is equipotential bonding.
Equipotential bonding is kind of a neat idea. If you can imagine the shell of the pool, which is usually made out of gunite or shotcrete, has a skeleton inside of it made out of iron rebar.
Right.
And the reinforcing steel rebar is all interconnected and wired together and crisscrossed and tied together. And the equipotential bonding is essentially a naked copper wire that has a special clamp that clamps to the shell of the pool. Now we call it four-corner equipotential bonding, and it wraps all the way around the pool near the top, and this naked wire runs all the way back to the lights, each light in the pool, and to the pool equipment. And it connects to each pump, the other electrical items, which may include the heater, a blower, the automatic operating system, anything that's electrical or has electricity going to it. And it bonds them. What the bonding does is kind of neat. It collects stray currents that may be in the ground. Let's say that a conduit is old and it's rotted away, being a metallic conduit, and there's a wire that has some missing insulation, and it may lose some current. This collects it and sends it back to the motor, and it's grounded now, so it's harmless to a bather.
Right. So all the equipment, the motors, heaters, anything like that needs to be all daisy chained together with that equipotential bonding. It's kind of like, a bunch of people holding hands. You're all holding hands, so you're all bonded, right?
That's exactly it.
That's the simplest way to explain it. So this is by the way, this is the number one thing I see missing on any pool inspection. Equipotential bonding, completely disconnected, or I can just pull it apart and it just slides out of the clamps. It's just never really connected right. That's one of the biggest things I find.
In my report that I write up, the first item under the electrical heading is equipotential bonding system. It's that important.
Yep. And let's see, on my, same here. Yeah, mine's pretty right at the top as well. Bonding present, bonding not present, bonding needs attention, all kinds of stuff. And I have an explanation on it as well.
So these are the two main items that I look for when I'm looking at a pool: child safety and GFI protection.
That's everybody's safety.
Yes.
Yeah. So that goes from child safety to everybody around safety. Getting into the electrical. Electrical is pretty important, especially, we all went to school, and I'm pretty sure they told us all, water and electricity don't mix. So you got to be careful with that. And another point I want to ask you about is, if you have an old pool, who knows what that electrical is going to look like? I mean, I've seen electrical in old pools. It's never the same. It's always just looks like it's slapped together. You got a timer box. You got two pieces of conduit coming out of the ground. You got a timer box sticking on top of it. Bonding's missing. Plastic safety cover inside the timer box is missing. It's not even an outdoor box. It's an indoor box missing the seal. It's rusted everywhere. So what can you tell us about how that should be installed in an older type pool? Like what kind of repairs would be required to bring it up to date?
Most people look at a swimming pool and the tile is dated and the plaster is stained and maybe the deck has some cracks in it, and they want to freshen up the look of the pool.
Right.
But the look of the pool itself, that's only one system, the beauty of the pool.
Cosmetics.
Yeah. But there's also the electrical system. After 30, 40, 50 years, a pool needs to have a new electrical system installed and may need to have new plumbing installed in the pool.
Sure.
So
pre-1970s pool is going to have copper.
It's going to have copper.
Yeah.
Copper has a finite life between 40 and 50 years in a pool environment.
Yeah.
And after that, you're on borrowed time. It'll develop pinhole leaks, and it'll have lost some of its thickness through corrosion or erosion.
Right.
And it's time.
Diving boards and slides. Let's talk about that.
Okay, I'm going to have to tell you a story.
All right.
To get into this. I know this is anecdotal, but it's what happened. Around 1974, 75, a guy like me built a pool for a guy like you.
Okay.
And then you sold the house to somebody else, and he rented it out to another party. And then that third party who was renting the house had a party, a crazy, wild party.
California style, right?
California style. And one guy seemed to drink a little bit too much. Was having a great time.
That was probably me.
And he jumped off the diving board and he cracked his head on the bottom of the pool. They pulled him out, and he was a paraplegic, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they moved him, and he became a quadriplegic.
Oof.
And his attorney sued the guy who was renting the house, the guy who owned the house, the guy who owned the house that had the pool commissioned to be built, the pool builder, and the local municipality. And he won against everybody.
Wow.
The people that built the diving board, of course, lost the biggest amount of money. And they picked up stakes and they moved out of California. In fact, all the diving board manufacturers did. They moved to Arizona, they moved to Oregon, anywhere but California. Now, today, you cannot install a diving board in a pool because your insurance company won't let your business liability do it. You can't do it.
Right.
It's too expensive, or they won't cover you. And as a homeowner, you have to have a special insurance if you have a diving board, and they will make it easy for me to say. They'll make it prohibitively expensive for that insurance so that you just take the diving board out.
Got it.
Nobody builds them in California.
So if let me create my own little story here, little scenario. I'm going to buy a house, and it has an old pool, and it's got a diving board and a slide. How does that affect me aside from the insurance part? Am I going to be required to take that out, or is that my own choice if I don't want to pay for the extra insurance?
That'll be your own choice, but you should figure that a diving board is the one appliance around a pool that causes the most accidents.
Right.
Is it worth it? It's fun for little kids, but little kids grow up to become bigger kids,
right,
and then it's a problem.
Got it. What about slides? Any issues with that?
An older slide that's made out of fiberglass and aluminum has seen its better days, and likely the gel coat is coming off. And as you go down the slide, you're going to get slivers of fiberglass.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to remove that. You can replace it with one of the newer acrylic slides. And again, it's a company in Arizona that ships them in. And it's really tough to sue a company in Arizona from here.
Is it also going to be an insurance problem with a slide?
It may be. It'll depend upon your carrier.
Okay, so diving board, definitely a problem with insurance. A slide, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. That's good information right there. I'm sure a lot of people have no idea about that, especially realtors actually trying to find a home for their clients that has a pool, and they show up and they find out it has a slide. They may not know this, so this is good information right here.
As an inspector, it would be on your best advice to recommend that it be removed, a diving board, every time you see one.
Okay. Slide removed or not?
If it's an older slide and it's fiberglass, yes.
It's just all worn out. You know, when I was a kid, my mom, we had an above ground pool, and we had a lot of fun. I got to be honest. We had a lot of fun there. So this is going back quite a while, late 60s, early 70s. And she had put in an above ground pool, and we had a garage right next to it, which was...
I know where you're going with this.
which was like not far enough away where you couldn't run off it and jump in. And that pool was only 4 feet deep. We actually, you know, I think they dug out the bottom of it. It might have been 5 feet deep. And yeah, we would. Myself, I don't think I ever did it, but my older brothers did, and their
Your
friends.
nose is growing, Pinocchio.
But anyway, she also bought a slide for that pool, which made it really fun. So she actually had a slide put in, and man, we had so much fun on that.
Hey,
slide.
can I interject and ask a question?
Sure.
Personal question.
Sure.
Did you ever remember being in that pool and trying to climb up the downslide?
Up the down. Yeah.
You went up, right?
Yeah.
See, kids do dumb things.
I did all kinds of dumb shit. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a kid. So yeah, that was my experience with slides. I've only seen a few slides in the recent years of inspecting pools and stuff. Typically when I see them, yeah, they're like old and worn out and beat up. So I always first of all, I disclaim slides. I disclaim diving boards right away for my customers. so they know I'm not there to inspect the slide or inspect the diving board. They need to call someone else in to do so. That's how I handle it.
Most slides manufactured today have a deep channel in the middle and high sides, so it contains you as you're going down the slide.
It's probably a good idea. Yeah.
The older slides didn't. They had a small rail on each side, and boom, you're down.
Right. And by the way, my mom now she's still in the same house to this day. And I don't know what year it was, but she actually pulled out that above ground and put a below ground in. And guess what? She's got a diving board. No more slide, but she definitely still has a diving board. And all my little young relatives, they love it. They're in there all the time in the summer.
Yes, their favorite phrase to say is, watch me.
Yeah, watch me, exactly. So, okay, I think we just covered diving boards and slides safety-wise, and they're definitely dangerous, and you may run into a problem with insurance. Those are some key takeaways right there.
Those are big takeaways.
Okay, Langolier saturation index. I just want to bring that up a little bit. I don't want to get into chemicals and all that stuff because we're not actually at a pool right now. We're just sitting at my desk.
Well, this is water chemistry, and way back, I don't remember how many years ago, Mr. Langolier invented and did testing on saturation degree of calcium carbonate, and that was for boilers, how to predict when a boiler was going to precipitate calcium carbonate on its insides. And he developed a chemistry table.
Chemistry set.
Chemistry table. And it incorporated measuring in water the pH, which is the potential of hydrogen ion, total alkalinity, calcium hardness, total dissolved solids, water temperature. And he put them all together and came up with a formula to predict whether you were going to either plate out materials on the inside of your boiler or you were going to etch them off and the metal along with it.
Right.
And it was originally just for large boilers for buildings, and it was adapted at some point for swimming pools. And it's not exactly the best method to predict deposition of calcium, but it's a good source.
Right.
And it's one tool.
Right. Got it. So maybe you can explain a bit in more detail, what are the effects of poorly balanced water? What's it going to do to your pool? What's it going to do to your pipes? Give us a rundown on that.
Well, you can either have perfectly balanced water, whether it's not etching and it's not depositing.
Right.
With an etching, the pool is slightly acidic, and there's not enough calcium to balance that out, and the water will attack the calcium carbonate plaster of the pool, and it'll pit or it'll stain,
right,
or a number of other minor things. It'll start to eat away at the surface. That's something that happens rarely, but it only takes a short period of time to ruin a plaster surface that way. You can also have deposition where the calcium carbonate or other materials are going to plate out or precipitate onto the surface, and that causes a smooth plaster surface to become rough like sandpaper.
Yeah.
Now, pools shouldn't be perfectly smooth. They should be about as rough as, say, 220 grit sandpaper,
right? Okay.
Which you can rub your hand on it and barely take off some skin.
Right.
If it gets to be rough, like 180 grit or 150 grit, you can feel it, and it feels like salt grains, right, on the surface. And it's really difficult for small children and their feet because they have tender feet. They
right.
don't have calluses like adults do. So children are up and down, in and out, back and forth in a pool, and they're constantly touching things with their fingers, elbows, hands, and feet.
Yeah.
And when you get a sore because you're rubbing all of the skin off, it's extremely painful once you get out of the pool. And you don't even know if you're bleeding when you're in a pool because you can't see it.
Right.
So we want to avoid deposition, and we want to avoid etching of the pool plaster surface.
Now, when you say etching, what do you mean by etching? I'm not quite following you on that.
Etching is removal of parts of materials that are in the plaster mix.
Okay.
So a plaster mix is white cement or white marble cement and white marble sand that's been ground down and sieved.
So is it visible too? Sometimes, like what I see a lot with older pools is I'll see sometimes it's like a spotted everything. There's spots everywhere, just like light spots. Maybe the pool base is like a light blue, and I'll see a bunch of white spots all over, almost like it's a leper. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And some people, I've had realtors say, "Oh no, that's the design." I'm like, "Ma'am, that is not the design of the pool. That wasn't intentional. This is a worn pool finish, and it probably needs resurfacing." So that's what I come across. Would that be a visual of what you're referring to as etching?
It could be. Most plaster, 50% of pool plasters are white. The rest are colors or pebble finish.
Right.
And the colors will model to some extent, and they'll change colors, and they'll get stained. And it's very noticeable in a pool. If you have a black pool and it models gray or white, you notice it.
Right.
Now, white pools also model, and it models white on white or gray on white, and it's not as noticeable.
Right.
Once the minerals and the metals start to plate out, then you get greens, grays, blues in the plaster. And you may think, I'd like to get this clean, so you hire a pool man or some kind of repair person to come out, drain your pool, and acid wash it to take off that surface deposition. When you do that, it makes the pool rougher. So you're etching at a high rate. You're etching the top surface.
You're etching on purpose.
Yes.
You're etching on. You think you're fixing it, but you're actually making it worse.
Correct.
So doesn't the pool guy know that?
When the pool service man is considering making money versus the longevity of your pool, which one's going to win?
Yeah, a little bit biased there, eh?
You know, I serviced pools. I had a service arm of my business for 30 years.
Right.
And for the first 10 years, I used to do acid washes until I became educated. And I stopped doing that.
Live and learn.
Live and learn. The neat thing about pebble finish is that it doesn't readily accept stains. It doesn't readily accept depositions. And just as a personal thing, the very first pool I pebbled was in 1988. And I had a chance to see it 2 years ago, and it still looks brand new today.
Wow.
Yes.
So pebble finish, what I typically see with a pebble finish pool is it's also saltwater pool. So can you touch on what it means to have a saltwater pool system?
A saltwater pool has, of course, salt in it, bags and bags of salt, but it's got a little unit, an electronic unit that takes the salt and puts it into its little ion particles, sodium and hypochlorite.
You're referring to the salt cell.
The salt cell separates it into, salt is NaCl.
Right.
That's the chemical composition. It separates it into Na plus and OCl minus in aqueous environments, like pool water.
Yep.
The salt cell takes that chlorine ion and separates the oxygen from the chlorine. And there's a whole number of little things that happen. But basically, you end up with a chlorine gas, which off-gasses up into the atmosphere, and ozone, which off-gasses into the atmosphere. The ozone, which is O3, is highly unstable. So it splits apart and creates more pure O2 molecules, and that's what actually cleans the pool water. It disinfects algae, bacteria, things that shouldn't be in pools, should be dead. So it's the off-gassing of the oxygen that actually clean the pool. Chlorine, we've all heard the stories of small children being in a pool for a long time and they get green hair. That's from chloramine. And chloramine is another thing that happens to pools where...
Wait a second, I got to interrupt you. You mean to tell me all the teenagers I see walking around with different colored hair might have just gotten out of the pool?
If it's green or blue, yeah.
That's the latest hairstyle color.
My oldest daughter,
That's so funny.
Blonde hair in the winter and green hair in the summer. But that's from, we're not going to get into this, but
Right.
That's from ammonia in the water, which gets there from human sources.
Right. So back to the salt cell and the components that go with having a salt system. It's my understanding that initially, when the pool is being built or being filled with water, you literally have to dump bags and bags of salt into there to get it going. Correct?
Yes, typically that's done approximately 30 days after the pool has been refilled, especially after being plastered.
Okay.
Because we don't want the salt to interact with the fresh plaster surface.
Got it.
So let's say 30 days later, you're putting in 800 pounds of salt.
Wow.
And you want to bring the level up to 3,000 or 3,500 parts per million of salt in the water, which doesn't sound like a lot. And you can barely taste it or feel it in the water.
Okay.
Now, you can turn on your electrolysis machine, and it'll start to create chlorine out of that salt.
Right. That's the part I wanted you to explain. Yeah.
Okay.
How one component turns into the next.
Well, it used to be that most pools were chlorinated, either using liquid bleach or a very strong form of bleach or dry tablets. And they'd create a very strong chlorine presence in the water.
Yeah.
The salt water creates a very low presence of chlorine, but it's enough to kill any living thing in the pool. So your bacteria, your algae, your little nasty little bugs,
Right.
they all die. But the level isn't so strong that it's going to dry out your skin.
Right.
In fact, with a saltwater pool, it makes your skin feel good. You feel luxurious.
Right. Right. Like maybe like a soft water softening system.
Yes.
Hard water system.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
A saltwater system, not saltwater, soft water system
Right.
isn't necessarily good for your pool.
Right.
Your pool needs some hardness. It needs some minerals in order to reach its water plaster equilibrium.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So, in other words, a saltwater pool is not like going in the ocean.
No, it's about 1/8 or 1/9 as strong as the ocean.
Right. So that's what I wanted to cover that today.
You could drink that water and not die.
Right. People understand, well, do I have a saltwater pool, what it means? I just wanted to get into that. So thank you for that. That was helpful information on that. And now let's get into copper pipe and how it...
so we're talking about the plumbing system now.
Plumbing system, which is copper pipe, which is typically a pre-1970s pool, correct?
That's exactly right, pre-1970s.
Okay.
In 1970, the first plastic pipes were coming out and found to be suitable for pools because they didn't interact with chemicals.
Right.
They didn't send copper ions back into the water to be plated out onto the surface. Mm-hmm. And they were smooth on the inside, and they were always going to be smooth.
Right.
Now, the chemical makeup has changed the formula for PVC pipes over the years. And now it's even stronger and less brittle than it's ever been.
Right.
Very strong, very good plumbing for a pool.
Right. So what that means, home buyers, is if you're buying a old home, anything prior to 1970, doesn't matter if the pool was built with the house or not. If it's built before then, it most likely has copper piping, unless the people you're buying the home from actually already replaced it. Now, to replace all that piping requires jackhammering up any concrete decking around the pool. Am I right?
Yes.
So you got to remove all that to get to the dirt under it, to dig up those pipes, and then replace that copper with PVC. This is a very extensive amount of work. What do you think something like that would cost?
The ballpark range would be $5,500 to $8,500 for a typical pool and spa.
Okay, and that includes pouring the new deck when you're done and all that?
Yes, but typically you'd be changing your 50-year-old deck out as well.
Right.
So that helps the cost. Copper pipe has a life of 40 to 50 years in a pool environment.
Okay.
And If a pool was built prior to 1970, that pool is 50 to 60 years old.
Yeah.
And it's way past. It's on borrowed time.
Borrowed time. So if you're noticing, hey, I keep losing water in my pool. Why do I keep losing so much water in my pool? Why does it keep going down 2 inches every couple of days? Well, you probably have a leak somewhere, and that could be caused by the copper pipe. Could be caused by the skimmer. It could be caused by multiple things.
That's right.
Yeah. So, in other words, there's really no upside to keeping your copper pipe.
Just the cost.
Yeah. So that's it. So it's inevitable. It will eventually deteriorate and become a problem. So that's what it means when your pool inspector tells you that you have copper pipe. You can expect to do repairs or replacement in the future. And now let's talk about something else that comes with copper pipe, and that is a copper skimmer.
Copper skimmers were and have always been rare. And some of the least expensive pools built in Southern California had a complete copper shell for a skimmer, and there was an actual filter in that skimmer, and we called it a skim filter. And all you had was a pump that would pump water. It would suck water through the skimmer. There was a basket on top that would clear out the leaves, and there was a set of grids down below, and that would screen out the dirt. And it was a very simple system. Those rotted out. I doubt if there's very many left.
I seen one actually about 2 weeks ago, but the pool was completely emptied. It was in really bad shape, and all I ever remember is that the skimmer cover has got to be 16 inches round.
It's huge.
It's huge
and deep.
You could climb into it.
Yeah, you can't reach your arm all the way down to the bottom on those.
No, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean that's something I wouldn't want to have if I was buying a house with. So that's another thing you probably want to upgrade as well. And that's going to be a single outlet, a single plumbing. So how would I word?
Well, you'll have a separate pipe coming from the main drain and a separate pipe coming from the skimmer.
Right. That's on a newer pool.
Well, that's on the older pools. Sometimes these copper skimmers would have the main drain plumbed into a side outlet on these copper skimmers. And you'd have to use some kind of a plug to plug off the main bottom of the skimmer where all the water went to the pump.
Yep.
And plumb it all the way back to the pool.
Yeah, I've seen some weird
stuff.
Weird stuff, exactly. Okay, so let's get into. I want to try to say this. Don't laugh. Diatomaceous. I could never pronounce that word.
You're close. It's diatomaceous.
Diatomaceous. Okay, diatomaceous earth versus a cartridge filtration or sand filter.
Originally, pools had rock and sand filters.
Okay.
And they were monsters, the size of a small car. And they had good-sized rocks in the bottom. When I say good size, I mean the size of your thumb.
Okay.
And then they got progressively smaller as you went to the top of this giant tank until you had a very fine sand on top. Typically, it was a silica sand, which was screened to be all the same size, maybe number 20 grit. And they were adequate for screening out dirt and large particles, but not fine particles. So as part of your weekly service, you'd throw in some clotting agents, which would clot the dirt together and the finer particles together so they could be screened out. And then you could reverse the flow of water in your filter, and that would clean it. And you'd send all this dirty water to the waste or the street.
I used to own a DE filter on one of my pools.
The DE filter was much more compact than the rock and sand.
Yes, much more compact. So go ahead. You were talking about the
so
DE.
the DE filters, diatomaceous earth filters, had a series of what we call grids on the inside, and they were wrapped with a fabric. And the fabric would get dirty really quickly if you didn't coat them with a material that was easily cleanable. So in Lompoc, California, they discovered a huge mountain that was just full of readily diggable diatomaceous earth. And it's calcified diatoms that were in the ocean that just settled out and died and settled out. And it was ideal for screening out materials up to, say, 5-10 microns. And you could not have to clean the filter for, say, 3 to 4 months. Then in the summer you might do it twice. But it made pool cleaning a lot easier, and the water was even cleaner, more sparkling than before.
It might have been easier, but I never enjoyed it.
Nobody enjoyed that. It's disgusting to clean a
never
filter.
I hated doing it.
And then they started to make, a couple of companies made cartridge filters, which had dozens of little cartridges in them, and it was easy to take apart. It was a pain to spray them off with a garden hose, but it was easier and less mess than diatomaceous earth, but it took longer to clean. And over the years, these have been...
it's kind of like a balancing act. Which one's better?
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where manufacturers kept refining their product, as they always do. And nowadays, today's filters, cartridge filters, are right up on par, easy to clean, easy to work with, and they screen out a very high grade of particles.
Right. So is there when somebody has to make that decision, they're in the pool store, they got the salesman in their ear going, okay, you need the DE, and another guy's over here, no, you need the cartridge. Well, my pool guy says I should get the cartridge, but the sales guy says I get the DE. What do you do?
What do you want, a Chevy or a Ford? It's either one will do the job.
Okay. That's a great way to answer that. Thank you. Yeah, I get asked that all the time. What's the difference? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use yours. It's either a Chevy or a Ford. Nowadays, we'll call it a Tesla, maybe.
Or how about a BMW and a Mercedes-Benz?
There you go. Okay.
Agreed.
All right. So let's see. Okay. Coping, tiles, and decking.
Decorations.
But let me ask you a little bit about loose coping. Loose coping, typically I see there's no expansion gap between the decking and the coping, one, there's no expansion gap at all. So you got concrete touching the coping. Expansion contraction is going to move that stuff and loosen it up. I get all that. But I have seen cases where I'm pretty confident bond beams were cracked.
It's all related.
Yeah. So can you explain more about the bond beam and how that affects the pool?
Well, a pool is built into the earth, and it's not going to move at all. The deck is floating on the upper crust of the earth, and it moves up and down. And on the hottest days of summer, a concrete deck will flex and expand maybe 1/8 of an inch every 10 feet.
Wow.
And if it expands toward the coping, it'll push the coping out into the pool, and the coping is affixed to the top wall of the pool or the bond beam of the pool.
Right.
And it'll take part of that, anything that's above the last bar of steel, and push it and break it over time.
Yep.
So that'll break right through the tile. Now you've got this neat horizontal crack going around your pool.
Yep.
Well, if you have an expansion joint that prevents the deck from touching the coping, let's say it's a piece of 3-inch tall by 1/2 inch wide foam, that'll prevent the two from touching.
Right.
And then you tear off the top of the foam once the deck is built, and you backfill it with a little bit of sand, and then you pour expansion joint material like Decoseal, over the top. It's a polysulfide based material, and
it's flexible.
It's pliable. Works great for 5 to 10 years.
Yep. And if you see that around your pool and it's all deteriorating, it's time to pull it out and replace it, because you don't want water getting in there.
You don't. You want the pool to be dry right next to the pool.
Right. So can you go into a little more about why you don't want water getting in between the deck and the bond beam and all that?
There's such a thing as a standard engineered pool, and it has a bond beam going around the top, which is kind of like the thicker edge around a can of Coke.
Which you can't see. Just so everybody knows, you can't see the bond beam.
You cannot see it.
It's covered with the coping and the pool tile on the face.
Just in round numbers, let's say the wall of the pool is 6 inches thick for most of it. But up at the top, it gets thicker, and it's maybe 12 inches thick. And there's more steel running around the top of the pool wall, and that prevents the pool from cracking.
Right.
Every time somebody jumps into a pool, they're displacing a certain amount of water, and that's a force against the wall of the pool.
Right.
And if the pool is designed with a standard engineering detail, that means it's got minimal steel in it and minimal concrete in it. And it's meant to have a deck which allows the soil under the deck and next to the pool to remain dry and resist that force of somebody jumping in.
Right.
Or the occasional earthquake that we get in Southern California.
Right. Okay.
A custom engineered pool might have what we call either a freestanding detail or a no deck detail, which means it has more steel in it, has more concrete in it, and it's able to resist even when the earth next to it is wet and less able to resist forces. So the pool itself will resist.
Got it.
So nowadays, one of the trends is to build a pool and have grass come right up next to it.
I was just going to say that.
I can read your mind from here.
I don't like that.
I saw that. I saw you say that. I can read your mind.
I don't like that when the grass runs up to the coping.
Yes.
You're dragging all the grass and the dirt into the pool every time you go in it.
Well, you can imagine everybody's got a job to do. So when the gardener is blowing the leaves and there's nobody looking, he's going to blow those leaves into your pool.
Oh, that's another point. Oh, that's a pet peeve of mine, gardeners.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't mean to, but they do. And
you know, every time I leave for work in the morning to go inspect the house, there's a gardener that hears it, and he knows I'm going to a certain house, and he shows up the same time I do and annoys the shit out of me with his leaf blowers. I don't care about the lawnmowers, but the leaf blowers, man, that really hurts my ears. Those guys piss me off on a daily basis. And I'm like, here they go. Here we go. Everything was quiet, and here comes the gardener. Noise pollution for the next 2 hours. It's like, oh, come on. Anyway. Lawn against the coping. How? So people are designing. I want people to understand this that are listening or watching. When you are running the lawn right up against the coping, the pool is designed to be that way, correct?
It's designed to have wet soil against it because it doesn't need strength in the soil to keep it from flexing.
And it doesn't need the concrete decking to help support it as well.
Correct.
So would that have the same type of a bond beam as a regular pool with a concrete deck?
No, it's going to have a thicker bond beam. It's going to have more steel in it.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be able to resist all these forces without any external help from the soil.
Got it. Okay, so it's engineered that way. That's a good one, because I remember a couple of years back was the first time I noticed that. And people are asking, is that good? Well, I didn't like it from the get-go, but that's just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's not okay. But what I noticed is the grass was right around the skimmer, too.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I just didn't like it.
So you're going to get extra biological materials into the pool,
Yep.
Extra vegetation in the pool.
Yep.
All kinds of little things are going to happen and make your pool dirtier.
And if you wonder why there's always grass in your pool, go knock on your gardener's forehead and say, hey, man, you got to knock that shit off, because that happens all the time. They're just going to blow that stuff right in your pool. And you wonder why your filter's always clogged and your skimmer. Okay. What can a homeowner expect if they've never had a house with a pool? Utility costs on that pool. Maintenance costs.
That'll totally depend upon the authority that supplies the electricity to them. Here in the part of Los Angeles that I live in, we're beholden to this Department of Water and Power owned by Los Angeles. And they have constructed a hierarchy of fees that if you use a gallon of water a day, I'm just picking a number out of the air,
right?
You pay 5 cents for that gallon of water. If you use over that, 1 to 10 gallons, they're going to charge you 12 cents. And if you use more than 100 gallons a day, they're going to charge you $1.50. And it's, unless you have no grass, no landscaping, you won't be able to meet that minimum. So essentially, this is a tax on your water in Los Angeles.
Right.
You can expect the pool with the motor, with the gas, with the electric, with the water that you're going to use. The water that you use is the minimal. It's the least costly item.
Okay.
The electrical could add $200 to $300 a month to your electric bill.
That explains my last house right there. And his options, you got a single speed motor, or you can get nowadays a variable speed motor. Is that going to help electricity?
A variable speed motor is an incredible invention for a pool.
Yeah.
Let's say you need to move 50 gallons every hour or 3,000 gallons a day through the filter in order to keep your pool clean.
Is that a typical amount for an average size pool?
I'm just pulling a number off the top of my head.
Okay.
I have to run the numbers. But if you could use a 3 horsepower pump and do it in an hour, great. But your electric bill is going to be extremely high because to move that much water takes 3 horsepower, and that consumes a lot of electricity.
Yep.
Let's say you can use that same pump and run it much slower, and you're only using 1/6 of a horsepower, but it takes 24 hours. You're actually saving money because you're moving the same amount of water through your filter so it's cleaned, and instead of paying $10 a day for electricity, you're paying 50 cents a day.
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I've always pushed that on customers. Like, you know what, you got an old pool system here. You got a new filter, but you're still running a single speed pump. You can make the investment and go to a variable speed. And
now, that's also going to depend upon the size of the piping that you have. If you have an old pool, it's going to have very small diameter pipe,
right,
and you can only pull so much water through that pipe. For instance, if I gave you a cup full of water and a straw, and I said, take a drink, no problems, right?
Right.
If I made that straw 30 feet long and said, take a drink, you couldn't do it because the friction wouldn't allow the water to pass through. It's the same thing with a high horsepower pump. If you don't have large diameter pipe, it can't do the job you want it to do.
Got it.
It can't pull the water.
So, so in other words, adding a variable speed to an old pool system may not help it.
Yes.
Okay. That's good to know. Now, I want you to look at your camera for a second and say, hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
So my editor, Dave, has a pool question. He actually asked me this months ago. Now, I thought I gave him good advice, but I want your opinion on it. He was, we're talking about, he had kept having problems with keeping his pool, clean and the water right and stuff. And he told me he was only running the pool motor for a couple hours a day. I said, that's probably your problem right there. Running it only a couple hours a day is probably not going to circulate enough water to keep things clean and according to how many chemicals you put in it. So I was telling him, in the summer, you probably want to run that thing 8 hours a day, 6 to 8 hours, and maybe in the winter less. What's your opinion on that? That's
a good rule of thumb, and that's the advice that I give most people.
Okay.
Every pool is different.
Yes, I got it right.
I'm going to give you a gold star on that.
All right.
Every pool is different. No two pools are alike. The environments are different. Number of people using it, the number of trees and landscaping, shrubbery around the pool. There are two main reasons for having a green pool. Number one is not enough chlorine or sanitizer, and the other is not enough filtration. Now, almost everything else that we can think of that happens to a pool has to do with one of these two items. If you have old water where it's got a high concentration of dissolved salts and minerals, it effectively buffers against the chlorine and keeps the chlorine from working and doing its job, killing the bacteria and the algae. If you don't have enough filtration because your filter's dirty or your filter's undersized or you're just not running your pump long enough and getting all of those gallons of water through your filter every day, you're not screening out enough debris or dirt or pollen or whatever happens to fall in your pool.
Right.
So those are the two main reasons. So the first thing I would say is run your filter a sufficient number of hours, your pump sufficient number of hours. And number two, make sure you always have a high level of sanitizer in there. During the summer months, during the winter, very, very low chlorine consumption.
Okay. So how many hours? Was that about right?
Yes, 8 hours in the summer, 6 to 8 hours in the summer, and 4 to 6 hours in the winter.
Okay.
Good rule of thumb.
All right. There you go, Dave.
That's for you, Dave.
You're welcome. You have anything else you want to point out, like just for general pool ownership?
Yes, there's a high cost that nobody will tell you about, but I'm about to tell this to you today. And get out your pens and pencils because this happens to everybody.
I'm ready.
When you first get a house with a pool, every weekend in the summer, when it's really hot, all your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, everybody's coming over to your house, and you have to feed them. That's the single biggest cost of owning a pool.
That's great. I never thought of that.
Institute the Costco rule. Nobody comes over to your house unless they bring a case of something to drink, the snacks, something to put on the barbecue, something to contribute to the cost.
Something to offset that all that water being dragged out of your pool every time somebody gets in and gets out of your pool, because you will be refilling your pool later.
And adults pee in the pool more than children do.
That's true. I think that is true. I'm probably guilty of that as well. We all are.
I haven't been in the pool for a long time, so I don't remember.
So I want to, that was great. We covered a lot for home ownership. Swimming pool ownership for homeowners. Whether you're first time pool owner. I've owned a couple of pools. It's a lot of work, to be honest. It's a lot of maintenance. You got to get a pool guy, which is probably what, $100 a month.
Around that.
$100 a month. Some guys probably charge $150. So there are costs that come with owning a pool. I know all of you are like, oh, I'll just do it myself. I'm a DIYer. You'll get sick of that in about 30 days of trying to maintain that pool. It's a lot of work. And if you're a busy person, just get a good pool person. Keep an eye on them. You may want to recycle them every 6 months, just like your gardener, because they all get lazy and get complacent. So keep an eye on who you're hiring. That's my tip, because I'm talking from experience. I've had a couple pools. I've had pool guys. I've had great ones and really bad ones. So now I just want to go over, what advice would you have for home inspectors? What are the main things they should be looking for aside from the child safety that we already covered?
Yeah, the child safety for a swimming pool is part of the home inspector's
right. Well, yes,
milieu anyway.
We're now required to, if we inspect a house and we're not there to inspect the pool, we still have to comment on the Senate Bill 442, which is the swimming pool safety. So we do have to comment on that in all our reports, whether it's a in-ground, above-ground, spa as well. And a body of water, swimming pool body of water is 18 inches or deeper, right?
Or deeper.
Or
yes.
deeper. So big, even would that apply to like a huge water fountain that was like 2 feet deep?
Yes.
Yeah, it would.
Yes.
Okay. So that's another thing that probably a lot of people are not aware of. When I say that, I mean homeowners and home inspectors. You get a really big fountain on the property, and it's got more than 18 inches of water. It's considered a pool.
It's considered a pool,
and it should have safety devices. And if you have children, you got to be aware of that. You may want to fence that thing off if you have small ones, because they could easily climb in that thing and fall in. Because typically the water fountains are not that high off the ground, but they're deep. Some can be deep, like it's dug out underneath, like it's deeper than the ground you're standing on, in other words. So, so as far as home inspectors go, anybody doing home inspections these days should be aware of this already. It's been in place since 2018. I believe it was 2018 it went into effect, right? Yeah, it was 2018 when that went into effect. So, electrical wise, any pointers for home inspectors there?
Yeah, do the big three. Check for equipotential bonding.
Yep.
Check for grounding, and check for GFIs.
Okay, grounding inside the timer box.
Yes.
Is that what you're referring to? Now, what should we be looking for right there?
Make sure that every conduit has a green wire going through it, and it's properly attached to the circuit board. Not circuit board.
Timer.
Well, to the grounding lug that's inside.
Got it. Okay. So any conduit should have a green wire coming through it.
Yes.
Grounding wire. Okay. And GFCI. What about when you got a really old pool and the junction box is right at the edge of the pool? What do you recommend there? Just upgrading that?
Cut it out and move it.
Move it.
Pay the money.
Okay, got it. And anything else for tips for a home inspector doing a visual on we don't get into a depth like you do. You probably get a little more in depth on your pool inspections than we do.
Oh, yeah. Look for cracks and anomalies. Is the pool level from side to side? Right. Look at the tile line.
Okay.
Is the water level on the tile line? If the pool has rotated more than an inch, that's a little yellow flag. If it's moved 2 inches, that's a bright yellow flag. If it's moved more than 2 inches, that's a red flag.
Got it. Okay.
In any hillside area where I work, if a pool is more than brand new, old, I always recommend the services of a geosoils company.
Right.
And they can choose to do it or not. It's up to them. I always check that box on my report.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add there?
No. If we do this again, I've got a lot more topics to talk about.
I'd love to do it again. You tell me when.
That'd be great.
We can add on to so there's more pool topics, is what you're saying, for homeowners to learn and for home inspectors?
Yes.
Okay. I'm down with that. So that sounds good to me. So Jeff, I really appreciate you coming out today and talking about all this, because I think we touched on some really good subjects, some good topics.
I've enjoyed this too, and I love talking when people are going to listen to me.
Yeah. Oh no. My listeners are listening. And we recorded it for a video for YouTube version as well. Because some people like to be on YouTube, some people like to be on the podcast apps and just listen. Some people like to just turn on YouTube and just listen. So it happens in different ways. But once again, Jeff Schulte from S&S Pools, by referral only. This man does not advertise. Well, he's been doing it forever, so he's got a great big fan base following him.
Since God was a boy, I sat behind Jesus in the 3rd grade.
There you go. And great pool inspector. Everybody loves Jeff. Never have a complaint about Jeff. So if you want to find Jeff, good luck, because
ask John.
Yeah,
he can turn you on.
Contact me. I can refer you to Jeff, and you may get him that way if he's not too busy already. But anyway, John here from Home Inspection Authority. Remember, if you're buying a home, don't panic. Just like the T-shirt says. By the way, what size are you? I'll get you one if you're a T-shirt guy.
I'm an extra small.
Extra small, okay. And so if you have any questions regarding the podcast or the YouTube, just leave a message, guys. I'll be more than happy to answer it myself. And if I can't, I will contact Jeff and get an answer. Maybe we didn't cover something you wanted to cover, or maybe we can talk about that on the next time I have him back, because I'm sure I will. Because I have a lot of questions. And next time I will have a few more photos for you to observe, just to go over a few things and stuff like that. But anyway, thanks again, Jeff.
Thanks for inviting me on your show today.
I appreciate it. And see you on the next one, everybody.
Are you going to drop the mic, or am I?
I dropped the pen. All right, we just dropped it right there. Thank you.